If you or a loved one lived or worked at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987, you may be entitled to financial compensation.
Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we are going to take a look at Kaiju number 8 and its overlap with the real world. You see, you heard that clip at the beginning of the audio. If you lived anywhere and were paying attention to anything, basically in the English-speaking world, but definitely in the United States, you have heard that ad or one very like it recently. Why? Well, the simple fact of the matter is that no matter what time or place you lived, a military force is inevitably going to be slightly careless with the life of the members of that military. Throughout all of history, the biggest killer in war was disease. The usual things, flus, colds that went through the camp, decimating the soldiers. The 100 Years' War was famously prolonged by these illnesses that swept through. Then you have just the history of toxic things. So in World War II, the bomber crews were given just literal jars of amphetamine. They gave it to the pilots. They said, you know what? Go for it. Knock yourselves out. And then, of course, in Vietnam, we have the infamous Agent Orange debacle. We have Camp Lejeune. We have the pits where they burned batteries and people died of cancer. And medically, there are these series of vaccines. For every generation of modern soldiers, they go in and they get a mass-produced vaccine, just dozens of them all at once when they come into the military. My mom told me the horror stories of her going in back in the 70s, and these are all fairly standard nowadays, but mass production has failure tolerances, and there's a certain number of errors in any given medication. Therefore, there's a certain number of people who are going to be suffering for it. And there is this kind of morbid joke in every military that every single soldier I've ever talked to, from whatever military, from wherever they are in the world, they get an injection and they say, yeah, this is going to give me cancer in 20 years. It's just kind of an accepted fact of life. Now, what does any of this have to do with Kaiju number 8? Well, I keep coming back to the fact that Matsumoto is really, really good about integrating realism into his work. If there is a massive punch, Kaiju number 8's leg spreads out a tripod to support it, just like you would have on any reasonably heavy artillery. If someone has shields, you can see the particle dispersion hitting the shield and deploying around it. If there is an animal that takes over if there's a kaiju that takes over another animal's body, it does it in a way that exists in the real world. Kaiju number 9 uses fungal spores to take over ant kaiju, something that happens every single day in the real world. So Matsumoto has this dedication to realism. Matsumoto has created a military defense force that pumps its soldiers' bodies full of kaiju particles. We saw it when Kokoro got injured. They used kaiju technology to heal her. We don't know exactly what that means yet, but we know we put them in those suits that fuse with their bodies, and we know the super suits, the numbered weapons, actively take years off of the soldier's life. It puts such a huge strain on their body. But what about the regular suits? You're taking an alien body, or something your body is going to try to reject, and you're tacking it into your nervous system. That cannot be good for you. So long term, yeah, probably everybody in the Defense Force is going to have cancer before they die. And I'm sure there's all sorts of lawsuits in this fictional Japan about contact so-and-so if you served in the Kaiju Defense Force between yada yada and yada yada. But let's just talk about the medical issues. and the suits for one specific thing. Kaiju number 9 has the power to revive dead kaiju tissues. Even a kaiju that has been blasted to pieces, the tissues will still twitch when kaiju number 9 summons them. How long before kaiju number 9 gets the idea to start hacking the Defense Force's kaiju suits? Because remember, those power suits that the Defense Force officers use, they are made of dead kaiju fibers. So what happens when kaiju number 9 hacks them and has neural feedback with the Defense Force officers' brains? Or we have seen multiple Defense Force officers, Kikoru, just blast a critical part of their anatomy and come back after medical care. What if part of that kaiju treatment is putting some sort of modified kaiju fiber to provide the superstructure to support their organ regrowth? Or just putting, I don't know, kaiju juice, a kaiju hormone in them? Does kaiju number KN9 have the ability to figure that out and literally hack the bodies of the Defense Force members who have received this treatment? It's something to think about, both from the, oh wow, that would be an interesting plot point perspective, and yeah, there is gonna be a wash of lawsuits in the Kaiju Defense Force in Japan about 20 years from the end of the series. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Are there entire legal agencies in Matsumoto's Japan that specialize in getting justice for Defense Force officers who were poisoned by the Kaiju Defense Force Kaiju-themed equipment? What do you think? Hit that like and subscribe button. Leave a comment below telling me what you think of my theory, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.
Drake McCarty's leg was shattered, deep in the wilderness. As the flash flood closed over him, something alien pulled him from the waters. A military base that shouldn't exist. An ancient warrior with secrets of his own. Drake returns to his family with a whole leg and the burden of a secret he doesn't understand. In the forest around them, someone is watching, and something followed him home. Flying Sparks. 90,000 words of science fantasy adventure. The first novel in the Dying Embers universe is now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and from the author as a signed copy. Get your copy now and step into a world where dragons walk the forest, aliens lurk on the mountain, and things go boomp in the night.
Escape into another world with the writings of author Betty Adams. Two worlds, one of utter absurdity, one of dramatic tension, both alike in aliens absolutely astounded by human behavior. Humans are weird, short, absurd science fiction stories. Flying sparks, dragons, aliens, and things that go boomp in the night.
Books available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, Google Play Books, and at authorBettyAdams.com for a signed copy.